So in 1938, playwright Patrick Hamilton wrote a drama called Gaslight. It's a theatrical play that centers on a married couple set in an ordinary Victorian home. But the plot is anything but ordinary. Years earlier, you come to find out, the husband committed a murder tied to the very house, and so the rooms now double as both a marital dwelling and a crime scene that he is desperate to keep hidden. And so to shield himself from suspicion, the husband makes a calculated move. He sets out to drive his wife insane, or at least to make her look that way to everyone who matters. He understands that at the end of the day, her credibility, if he can make it crumble or draw it into suspicion, that his secrets can stay intact. And the way that he does this is by twisting and distorting her perception of reality. Small items in the house disappear and then reappear. A brooch mislaid, a letter never received, a picture that somehow won't stay straight on the wall. Servants are coached to smirk or forget. Neighbors are kept at arm's length. Little things out in the open to make the wife question her sanity. But the biggest deceit comes from the name of the play itself, because it's set in a Victorian home from the 1880s, and so the house is illuminated by gas lights, which means they are controlled by the flow of that gas all throughout the house. And so every time the husband will leave the room in the play, he goes and he adjusts the flow of that gas, and you see the lamps in the room and in the house grow noticeably dimmer, and then when he returns, they brighten up. And this all happens out in the open. The audience can see it, the wife can see it, but each time she names and voices what is happening, he answers gently and reasonably that nothing has changed at all. He denies the dimming lights and suggests that, you know what, fatigue or nerves or female hysteria must be to blame. And it's through this simple effect where the brilliance of playwright Patrick Hamilton shines. Because while very, very simple, it is also devastating. The audience, just like the wife, sees what is happening in plain view. And that transparency kind of makes the audience feel complicit. We see it. We ache for her. But we can't name anything out loud because we see her wanting to believe what she has seen, and we know as an audience that she's not going crazy. The lamps really do dim and that she isn't imagining things. And yet helplessly we continue to watch as her husband methodically unthreads her senses, because the man who controls the gas lights also controls the narration. With an authoritative voice, he continues to twist reality, and he narrates her experiences back to her in a tone that sounds so confident, so sure, that doubt starts to sound like sanity. And sanity sounds crazy. And it's from this play by Patrick Hamilton where our culture lifted the term gaslighting. It's a term that has been used informally in psychology since around the 1960s, but it became part of our kind of collective everyday vocabulary around 2016. In fact, the American Dialect Society named gaslighting, that phrase, that term, as the most useful word in 2016, and then Merriam-Webster later named it the word of the year in 2022. But it's a word, it's a term that is used to describe a particular type of manipulation in which a person doesn't just tell a lie, it's where they cast doubt on the very foundation in which truth rests. It's the steady erosion of a person's confidence in their own senses and sight and memory and judgment until they stop trusting the evidence in front of them and they accept the version of reality supplied to them by someone who is acting more dominant. But the goal of gaslighting, it's not persuasion, it's actually kind of the opposite. The goal is disorientation. Because if I can make you doubt everything that you see, even the things right in front of you, well, I don't have to hide my behavior at all. I can do it right in front of you and just say it's something else. In a way, it's like looking into a funhouse mirror. Because normally, when you step into a maze of mirrors, like at a carnival or circus or whatnot, and you watch your body stretch and shrink, and you watch your face buckle and bend, while it is disorienting, everyone kind of knows the rules. The distortion is the point. And so when you step away from the funhouse mirror, well, the world just kind of snaps back into proportion. But gaslighting, it's a type of manipulation that tries to make the funhouse permanent. It drags the warped mirror into the public square and it declares, this is what things really look like. It demands that we accept the stretch and the shrink and the bend as normal. We know it when we see leaders insist that words that we heard were never spoken, that numbers that we read were misread, the videos that we watch somehow don't show what we saw. We see it when victims are told that their wounds are theatrical, when communities, entire groups of people are described as evil. We see it when we are told that the lights aren't dimming, but everyone can see the room going dark. And the worst part is how quickly this manipulation makes us question our sanity, because when we're shown this twisted, distorted mirror over and over and over and over and over again, well, the distortions, they can start to feel almost familiar. Our eyes, they start to adjust to the bend, but that's the goal. To make us live inside a reflection that serves the authoritative voice that is trying to control the narrative. And we didn't just invent this word because we were bored. It didn't all of a sudden become a thing because we were just looking for something fun to do. It rose because reality keeps getting manhandled in plain sight. We see it in the fog poured over the war in Ukraine, where atrocities are recast as liberation. We see it in the scapegoating of immigrants to justify cruelty. We see it in Gaza, where starving children are deemed a necessity, and in the military occupation of cities. The public square is crowded with funhouse mirrors, each one bent just enough to make harm appear responsible, and to make despair look like prudence, and to make neighbors look like threats. And that's because this tactic at its core is a maneuver of power. When someone wearing the costume of authority comes, when someone with a microphone, a badge, a pulpit, a platform repeats the distortion long enough over and over and over again, it exploits our most generous instincts. The desire to trust, the desire to be reasonable, the desire to assume good faith. And so cruelty hides behind our courtesy, and it counts on our reluctance to name it. But once the funhouse mirror gets placed in front of us, clarity becomes harder and harder and harder to recover. All of a sudden, we start finding ourselves bargaining with absurdity and second-guessing cruelty. And slowly, like the wife from Patrick Hamilton's play, we begin to second-guess our own common sense. We downplay what we have witnessed directly right in front of us. We talk ourselves into both sides' logic when one side is clearly kicking the other in the teeth. And ultimately, that is a misjudgment on us. Because manipulators are not looking for a shared worldview. They are guarding leverage. When power-hungry people gaslight the vulnerable and the powerless for the sake of getting their way, it is foolish to believe that they will ever relinquish that power. A clown hiding behind a funhouse mirror will continue to hide behind it because restoring clarity only reveals them as a clown. And when their performance it starts to wobble, they do not correct it. They escalate it. More spectacle, more slogans, more selective facts, more moral theater meant to drown out the testimony of those being harmed. The point is never truth. The point is never truth. The point is to keep the lights flickering long enough that we stop trusting our own eyes. And so what hope do we have? How do we keep our sight and our agency when those with power are working so hard to bend them both? How do we hold on to our clarity? As we conclude our series on the book of Proverbs, our Proverbs for today is actually kind of a brutal word of clarity in a world of gaslighting oppressors. Proverbs 29:13 says, "The poor and the oppressor have this in common. The Lord gives sight to the eyes of both." It comes from a cluster of wisdom sayings informally entitled Reflections for a Just King. And its essence is blunt. Sight is God-given, not king-given. God has given sight to both those with power and those without it, and therefore each see each other clearly. Now, the irony of the proverb, this wisdom, is that for someone living as a just and righteous ruler, this wisdom, written as warning, well, it actually becomes a blessing. Because if you lead with equity and justice and compassion, you will be validated for what you are, a good king. You have nothing to worry about. But for those who engage in cruelty and lies and corruption, this is damnation. Because this proverb breaks the fantasy of would-be dictators. It exposes the theatrical farce that they can shape their image however they want to. Because no funhouse mirror can hide their cruelty. No funhouse mirror can hide their corruption. And no amount of gaslighting can hide the fact that the emperor has no clothes. The proverb refuses the lie that reality is whatever the strongest voice declares, and the foolishness of the oppressor is believing that they can control what is God-given. They imagine that through force and manipulation and vindictive spite that they can own what is divinely gifted, but bullying is not absolution. And power and brutality only extend so far. And so you can silence powerless communities into compliance, but you can never force them to forget. You cannot erase the memory of harm. The oppressed will always have eyes to see their oppressor, and the oppressor, as much as they may try, will always have eyes to see those that they oppress. They may rehearse innocence before cameras, but they cannot unknow what their hands have done. Injustice does not blind those looking for justice, nor does it blind the shame of the oppressor. The Lord gives sight to the eyes of both. It is not sentiment, it is judgment. It names the dignity that cannot be taken from the harm and the accountability that cannot be escaped by those who are damned by their own choices and their own actions. Eventually, even kings are seen for what they truly are. The damnation of the oppressor is this: we continue to see. God has given us our agency and our witness. That is ours, bestowed to us by our Creator, and no dictator, no king, no emperor can rob us of it. And so when cruelty masquerades as patriotism, we continue to see. When lies grandstand as truth, we continue to see. When narcissism parades as benevolence, we continue to see. When fear dresses up as law and order, we continue to see. The oppressors of our world can flood the air with distortions, but they cannot confiscate our sight. They can choreograph denials, but they cannot blind a conscience awakened by love. They can gaslight themselves all they want, but they can never claim ignorance to the shame that clings to cruelty. Wisdom reminds us this: our eyes are not blind. And in the long accounting beyond headlines and beyond funhouse mirrors, history will see, humanity will see, and God already sees that what is done to the least of these is not erased. And what is done in the dark is not unseen, because we continue to see. Friends, that is our persistent, stubborn, and continued hope. Because while this wisdom stands as condemnation to the oppressors of our world, it also stands as words of comfort for us. Because it validates in a world of gaslighting that we can continue to hope and to trust in the sight that God has given us. We can trust in our ability to see what is compassionate. We can trust in our ability to see what is loving. And we can trust in our ability to see what is just. We can continue to envision a more Christ-like world because those things are not dictated by the powerful. It is God's gift, alive in communities that refuse to be blinded, alive in neighbors who refuse to be divided, and alive in people who are continuing to speak truth to power. And so, beloved children of God, take heart, for God has given you eyes to see. Believe, for God has given you hearts to love. And take courage, for one day we shall overcome. Amen.